Okay, so today we're going to drop the lower half of a pre-alpha leg. Things I learned on the way is if you're looking for parts and you can't find the serial number, chances are you have to buzz some of this black coating off of it with like a wire brush or grinding wheel, and then you'll get your serial number, which makes it easier to find parts. Next thing you want to do is make sure you're in forward gear. Right now I'm in neutral, so I'm just going to go up and around and pop it into forward. Just to double check and make sure it now does not rotate. Next thing you're going to want to do is put down cardboard and a bucket, locate your gear oil drain and undo it. I also like to keep this little styrofoam thing because it's really good for keeping all of my hardware without losing it. And then you want to locate your oil vent at the top, and when you open that up, it'll get the gear oil draining faster. Same kind of science as shotgunning a beer. And instead of dropping it on the ground, put it in there. While your gear oil is draining, you can start to take the lower half of your leg off. So just to get my sacrificial anode off, I'm going to use a 3/8 Allen key to undo the top, which is probably going to fall because I can't hold it with my other hand while I film. Maybe I can. So 3/8 Allen key is located on top right above. Sacrificial anode comes out, and then you're going to need a 5/16 Allen key to undo this one in here. And there we go. Now that my gear oil is down to a slow drip, I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the drain plug. Just so during the next steps I'm not worried about making a mess. And give it a quick wipe with a rag. There we go. So we're gonna have to locate the 5/5/8 bolts. You've got two that you need to get with a socket. One on this side and the other side that you'll need an open end wrench to get to, because as you back them up, the bolt gets stuck on the housing there, and one at the very back. So I'm going to go ahead and take all those off. It's good to go back and forth as you do it, so then it drops down slowly instead of putting all the weight and pressure on just one. Once you've got those 5/5/8 bolts off, you can slide down the lower half of your leg. I like to put mine into a workmate to hold it. It's a really good way to work on it without fumbling around on the ground and it moving around on you. As you're doing it, like I was saying, you want to do side to side because your bolts will end up, or the nuts will end up hitting this housing, and then you have to alternate sides and drop it down slowly. Otherwise, you'll be in a pinch. So now I'm going to take off the impeller's housing. I've got a 1/2 inch and a 2/7/16 bolts to do, and a 5/16 little one at the front. I'm just gonna go get some nut drivers and do that. Once you've undone those 4 bolts, you can then take the impeller housing out and you'll see that my impeller is completely destroyed and looks like it overheated in there. So it's definitely going to need to be replaced. So I went ahead and put my new impeller actually into a different housing that I had laying around, and I replaced the 2 rubber gaskets and metal plate. And just this little keeper, a good trick is to put a dab of marine grease behind it to kind of hold it in place as you're fitting your impeller and housing back on. What I didn't mention before is the copper tubing and the drive shaft itself get all gunked up with that carbon, so I just use brake cleaner to give it a good blast and wipe down to make the whole process easier and cleaner. And one thing that's very important is you'll see this little rubber, and that's for your gear oil. Sometimes it sticks when you're taking the bottom half of your leg off, and it's tiny and easy to lose, so just really important, make sure that that is still on there. And away we go. I'm going to put the new impeller and housing on, which might need a little bit of persistence. There we go. And wow, okay, I was really lucky. It was actually lined up perfectly, but a lot of the time to get that keeper lined up with the notch inside your impeller, you have to spin your drive shaft or your prop, because as soon as you drop your prop, it's going to automatically resort back to forward gear. Okay, so I'm putting this little neoprene gasket back on the drive shaft on top of the housing, and there you go. So remember that goes there, and we'll get our copper pipe and pop that back in place. And one thing you really want to make sure you do is feel the top of your drive shaft where the teeth go into the gear, and if you feel any metal sharp burrs or anything, you're going to want to file those down, because what happens is when you go to put the lower end of your leg into the top end, it's hard to see, but there's a couple oil water separator seals in there, and if it's sharp, it will damage those on the way in. And it's, well, I broke 3 of them before I realized what the problem was. So learn from my mistakes. And yeah, before you go and put it back on, make sure you have your 2 washers on your shifter shaft, I guess. And you're going to want to put some marine grease on to the top of your drive shaft and your shifter, just for an easier transition back into place. Okay, so now everything's back together. I've done all my bolts back up with the washers underneath, and I put a liberal amount of grease on my drive shaft and shifter, and it's time to put it back onto the upper part of the leg. So I'll get back to you in a sec. Once you get the leg on, you're going to want to get till you have about this large of a gap, and just start a couple of your 5/8 bolts. If you're having trouble getting it all the way up, chances are that in the back here on top of your shifter, this will have gone all the way over, and you'll have to spin it so it lines up before it's actually inside of its housing, and that is what's going to keep you in the right gear once you put the lower end of your leg back together. Once you've done up your 5/5/8 nuts again, the next thing you want to do before you bother putting back on your sacrificial anode or filling up with your gear oil or any of that is you're gonna wanna make sure you're in the proper gear. So, again, I'm in forward. The prop won't spin counterclockwise. Move it up to neutral. And the prop will spin freely each way. And then finally put it into reverse. And your prop won't spin clockwise, sorry. And that's just a good check, because if something went wrong in the process, I can pull that out and then it'll be all neutral now. But if something went wrong in the process, it could be a huge headache and then you have to backtrack. So again, learn from my previous mistakes. This is why I'm making this video. Okay, now that your sacrificial anode is bolted back on, I'm going to pump gear oil back into the leg. It should take around 1,500 milliliters to do that. Connect your hose into the drain hole and ensure your oil vent is open, and pump it until your gear oil starts to run out of the oil vent, and then quickly put the plug back in and you're good to go. Now that the impeller is fixed, you'll see the water will be spitting out of the exhaust and circulating and cooling. Thank you. Hopefully this video helped.
Adios.
Okay, so today we're going to drop the lower half of a pre-alpha leg. Things I learned on the way is, if you're looking for parts and you can't find the serial number, chances are you have to buzz some of this black coating off of it with like a wire brush or grinding wheel, and then you'll get your serial number, which makes it easier to find parts. Next thing you want to do is make sure you're in forward gear. Right now I'm in neutral, so I'm just going to go up and around and pop it into forward. Just to double check and make sure. It now does not rotate.